Do you consider yourself an emotionally intelligent person? Do you need to improve your emotional intelligence? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Boldly Driven Conversations with Bree. Okay, so emotional intelligence or the emotional quotient. What is it? Why is it important? What are the benefits? How do we improve it? And how do we know if we even are emotionally intelligent? So emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way, even when in a stressful situation. It means to be able to communicate effectively, to empathize with others, and to have the ability to overcome challenges by diffusing conflict. Okay, so that's kind of like the definition of it. It includes, there are some like key components, okay? There are some key things that are in emotional intelligence. The first thing is self-awareness. If you want to be emotionally intelligent, then you will have self-awareness. Self-awareness is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, excuse me, and our motivations and values as well. We understand ourselves. We know why we do what we do, why we think what we think, why we act and react and respond the way that we act, react, and respond. We know what we're good at. We know what we're not good at. And they're all accepted. That's how we build and have self-awareness. And this is a key component of having emotional intelligence and being able to build more and become more emotionally intelligent. Because emotional intelligence really is a lifelong journey. It's not I am now emotionally intelligent and I have arrived. You always can build more. You can always do more. You can always get better. And there's someone who is always going to be more emotionally intelligent than you are. And this is a good thing, that we always have a place where we can grow into and become. The second key component of emotional intelligence is self-regulation. So if we are able to think before we act, if we're able to control our reactions and choose to respond rather than react, then we are having better self-regulation. Then that means we have self-regulation and we can become more emotionally intelligent. This requires us to also be able to self-reflect. We have to be able to look at ourselves honestly and wholly and be able to say, was I right or wrong in the situation? Or is there something else I don't know? Is there a perspective I'm not understanding? So we have to be able to ask questions of ourselves and be able to understand that we can't just do what we think all the time. The third key component of emotional intelligence is the motivation to persist in the face of challenge. So this means resilience, having resilience, being able to build resilience, being able to persevere, being able to live and not always crack under the pressure. We're human. We're going to crack under pressure at some point, depending on how much pressure. And that is okay because we're human and it's part of the human experience. But the higher the emotional intelligence, the more resilience you will usually have and more motivation to persist even when things are hard. Perseverance, high perseverance. The fourth key component of emotional intelligence is empathy. This is a super important part of emotional intelligence and continuing building emotional intelligence. Empathy is the understanding and being able to identify other people's emotions and then respond appropriately. So, one of my children sometimes has a harder time with empathy. The pendulum will either swing to lack of empathy to over empathizing. He is on the spectrum and the autism spectrum. And this is something that can be very difficult for him, where the pendulum can swing one way or the other. And trying to help him find that balance between the two is a full-time job as a parent. And sometimes with empathy, this is something we can grow. This is something that can change. This is something that we are not just stuck not having empathy. This is something we can learn. It is a learned skill as much as it is also a natural instinct. So for those of you who are thinking of people who are not very empathetic, this is a learned skill. It is something that we can all get better at. We can all grow empathy. We can all grow compassion for other people. So we're not just stuck. This is not one of those, this is the way I deal with it kind of things. We absolutely can change and grow in this area. And this is something that is a huge component that it's vital to being able to build and live from the emotional intelligence that each of us has. And then the fifth major key component of emotional intelligence is social skills. And again, this is something we can build. It's about building and maintaining relationships, deep relationships, and also, service relationships, just being able to human with other people in a way that is appropriate, and build relationships rather than breaks down relationships. So the benefits of having a higher emotional intelligence is that you will have improved relationships. When you have a higher EQ, your relationships are going to flourish, at least from your side. Your people are going to be seen and heard and known and feel valued. At least from your side, if you have a higher emotional intelligence. You're going to have better communication skills overall, because when you have higher emotional intelligence, you have more confidence to be able to speak and communicate what it is you're feeling, what you're thinking, more effectively with others. You're going to be able to communicate more effectively overall, not just in your career, but in your relationships, and in general about subject matter. You're going to have an increased self-awareness. You're going to have more self-awareness. The more self-aware you are, the more self-aware you become. And it just is self-fulfilling prophecy. It's self-propelling. So yeah, because you are aware and you have self-awareness, you're going to become more aware of more of your weaknesses, and you're going to be like, oh, I want to change that about myself. And you're going to be able to make strides to change, because you're also going to have enhanced leadership skills. And this means you're going to be able to inspire and motivate others, as well as inspire and motivate yourself. And just also, you're going to have overall improved mental health, and emotional health. Because we have more awareness, because we have better relationships, because we can communicate better, because we have the social skills needed to be able to have, deeper relationships and relationships in general, you're going to have better improved emotional and mental health and overall. So how do we develop more emotional intelligence? How do we get better at it? There are lots of ways to develop this practice. I think the first thing is practicing self-awareness, asking ourselves those awareness questions about why we think and what we do and what our motivations are. It starts with us asking questions of ourselves, to better understand ourselves, to have better awareness in general. So we have to be willing to practice self-awareness and develop more self-awareness along the way. There has to be a willingness. We have to choose this for ourselves. And then also we have to cultivate more empathy, which means, again, we have to choose being kind. We have to choose being compassionate with ourselves and others. We have to be willing to understand other people's perspectives. We have to be open, and we have to be willing to be gentle with ourselves, be gentle with other people, and not always be so demanding, even in our expectations, even if they're good expectations. We have to be willing to give grace. We have to be willing to do this. We have to choose it. We have to put in the work to build deeper relationships. We have to be willing to put in the work. We have to be willing to risk. We have to be willing to be vulnerable with our people and be honest with them about how we feel. Be honest with them about our thoughts, our feelings. We have to risk vulnerability. We have to be willing to build deeper relationships. And we have to also seek feedback. We have to be willing to hear people's criticisms in a safe way, in a safe environment from safe people. I've talked about several times about several years ago, I asked my mentor for her to tell me the blind spots in my life, the weaknesses in my life that maybe I'm not seeing about myself. I had to receive her criticism, and I had to be open to it, open to her feedback about situations in my life, about relationships in my life, about choices that I made in my life. And I had to be very open to it. And it's not a one and done thing. Unfortunately, she is on a hiatus, and I don't have a mentor in that area of my life anymore. I do have business mentors, so I'm being open to their feedback about my business, about areas where I need to change, shift, move, be more open to, risk a little bit. Or maybe I need to be a little more consistent in this area. I have to be open to their feedback in order to grow. And this is how we build more emotional intelligence, by being open to criticism, which is not easy at all. And then we also have to practice mindfulness. We have to quiet ourselves. We have to be willing to sit. We have to be willing to be. We have to be willing to let go of future and the past and be in the present moment. So research has actually shown that the youngest generation, so like our younger children, Gen Alpha, is actually the lowest in emotional intelligence that they've seen in the last several generations. There has been a decrease in empathy, a great decrease in empathy. There has been a great decrease in self-control. There has been a overall less well-being, and they have linked this to the increase of using technology from a very young age, and the way that social circles have changed, specifically since the year 2020. They have noticed this. So children who are like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that age range, they are noticing a huge decrease because of the way that we changed socially and not having face-to-face interactions with people, and everything's through a screen, and the way that we have given our young children technology at a very young age as a distraction. I see this in my youngest son. He is 7. I have an 18-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and I see an immaturity in him that I did not see in my older children at the same age. I see less emotional intelligence from him as well. And, this is partly my fault, giving him technology at such a young age. The great thing about emotional intelligence is this: it can improve, and we can always grow in it. We're not stuck. It is not a permanent, it's not a permanent thing. It can be developed throughout our life. And so even though there has been a decline in emotional intelligence, it's not indicative of a permanent decline in emotional intelligence in the world. Okay. So that's the good news, right? And the bad news in both of those. There are lots of resources. There are lots of resources to be able to, improve our emotional intelligence. There are lots of online programs, resources such as, Coursera, I think it's called. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. edX, and like positivepsychology.com has lots of actual programs to walk you through so that I can build more emotional intelligence. And then there are a lot of like professional development programs so that you can learn emotional intelligence and learn how to teach others how to be more emotionally intelligent, such as Harvard DCE, Genos. And then there are lots of books. One of the best books that I've ever read about emotional intelligence is Emotional IQ 2.0 by Travis Bradbury. And then there's also Primal Leadership, which was written by Daniel Goleman. These are excellent resources to learn about emotional intelligence, build more emotional intelligence, and learn how to teach others how to be more emotionally intelligent. There's always therapy and counseling as well. There are factors that will hinder development of emotional intelligence at no matter what age. And some of these include the lack of self-awareness, choosing to not be self-aware. This means avoiding reflection. This means denial of your emotions and having poor self-regulation, not being able to regulate yourself, not wanting to regulate yourself, and just saying what you feel all the time and not thinking about other people, which also includes impulsivity, being very impulsive all the time. Like, I'm all about risking and being bold. There's a difference between being bold and impulsivity, like making poor choices very quickly without any thought whatsoever or reflection on how this is going to affect other people. Also just having emotional reactivity and overreacting to other people's emotions and situations in our lives. A lack of empathy is a factor. Just not having empathy. Some people are born without empathy. Some people are born with certain issues that cause them to not be able to be empathetic naturally. Again, we can grow and build this as a skill. We can develop it. But, sometimes when there is egocentrism or narcissistic tendencies, when we're only focused on our own needs and not thinking about anybody else, this is a huge hindrance. And when that is fed by parenting or fed by traumatic experiences, it makes it even more difficult. The lack of other people's perspective and taking into account other people's perspectives is not cultivating empathy. That is hindering your growth in emotional intelligence. And just having a judgmental attitude in general, just judging others all the time on everything and believing that our own moralistic value system is the only moralistic value system. And if someone does something that falls out of alignment with our value system, we then judge them harshly. And this is going to be hinder to us being able to grow higher emotional IQ. lacking social skills in general. So if we just grew up without having social skills, without opportunity to utilize social skills, this means we're going to have poor communication. If you have a lot of conflict avoidance as an adult, you don't like to engage in conflict, not asserting yourself, and you actually avoid conflict, this is going to lower your emotional intelligence. And if you have difficulty with reciprocating, if you have difficulty reciprocating to others who are giving to you, if you have difficulty receiving and you have difficulty giving in reciprocity, you're going to have a lower emotional intelligence. And then just having negative influences in our life in general, having toxic relationships that we are around, being in a very stressful environment, and then lacking any emotional support for any changes that we want to make in our life. These are all factors that are going to affect whether or not we are going to be more or less emotionally intelligent. So what can we do about it, right? So what can we do about all these things? I think there are some questions we can ask ourselves. Specifically, there are 5 really important questions that have helped me to be able to build on my own emotional intelligence and to help clients build their emotional intelligence. And so I want us to talk about these. These are 5 questions that I want you as well, this is part of your bold challenge, to ask yourself today about your own emotional intelligence. So the first question is, how well can I identify my emotions? This means, am I able to accurately label and identify my own emotions and sensations in my body? This means that I understand my triggers. And this also means that I can effectively manage my own emotions, that I don't have to have someone else manage my emotions for me, that I can manage my own emotions. The second question is, how well do I understand other people's emotions? This means, can I read their emotions? Can I read other people's emotions through body language, through tonality of their voice, and their facial expressions? I'm able to read facial expressions. Do I actively listen is a part of this question. Am I listening to other people? Am I actively listening? Am I not allowing myself to be distracted and I'm giving eye contact and I'm repeating back to them what I think they're saying to me? That's active listening. Am I involved in this? Am I able to actively listen to others? And do I respond appropriately to other people's feelings? Meaning, if I see someone is sad, am I laughing at them, or am I giving them space? Am I giving them time to grieve, or am I expecting something else from them because it makes me uncomfortable that they're sad or grieving or whatever it is, whatever feeling it is that they're having, those uncomfortable feelings? I'm able to be around other people's uncomfortable feelings. The third question to be able to gauge our own emotional intelligence is, how well do I communicate my feelings? Can I clearly assert my own feelings about a situation? Am I able to do it without blaming or criticizing the other person if it is a negative situation and I need to communicate some negative feelings? Can I do it without blaming them or criticizing them? Can I clearly communicate my own needs and my own boundaries effectively so that people know where the boundary line is? Am I able to do that, or am I not doing that because I want to avoid conflict? And can I have constructive conversations with people even if we have a disagreement? Can we be constructive about our conversations without calling names, without being divisive, without being mean and rude and vindictive? The fourth question about being able to gauge our own emotional intelligence is, how do I manage conflict in general? Do I react? Am I rational? Am I calm? Or am I responding, in calmness and peacefulness? Or am I reacting in anger always and out of fear? Do I avoid personal attacks on other people? Do I avoid personally attacking myself? Do I find common ground with other people when we are in a conflict or in a disagreement? And do I avoid conflict in general? Am I avoidant? Am I an avoidant when it comes to conflict? Do I avoid conflict in general? Meaning I'm not effectively communicating my own needs and boundaries and just have the expectation that these things are going to be met. And then the fifth question is, how well do I maintain my relationships? How well do I build my relationships? Am I doing it? Am I valuing my relationships? Do I put in the same effort that I expect? Do I nurture my relationships? Do I live in reciprocity? Am I receiving and giving in these relationships? Do I trust other people? Do I trust those people I'm in relationship with? And am I trustworthy in my relationships? And do I express my gratitude and my appreciation for my people? Do I express that? Am I able to say, hey, thank you for loving me and helping me and being a part of my life? These are really 5 really good questions we can ask ourselves to be able to gauge. If we're not able to answer yes to lots of these things, truly and being honest with ourselves, then we desperately need to build emotional intelligence. If this is an area where you struggle, please contact me. I would love to help walk with you through building emotional intelligence and coach you through emotional intelligence. And let's figure out what's blocking you. What factors are blocking you? Go over that list of factors that could be blocking and see what things maybe are blocking your development of emotional intelligence. All right, guys, have a great